Well, I decided to come up to Walmart. I checked in and I finally pointed out nobody's ever told them, their landscapers or whatever, that every night they're losing at least 1 to 2,000 gallons of water just shooting out on the pavement, running into the drain there at the clinic. If you just, it's probably closer to 2,000. The, there's nothing, no choke on the. So in the last 2 months, that's almost 250,000 gallons of water that's just run across the pavement into the drain. And why did I stop here? Because right off the bat, because you see so many of them that are so much smaller. Now that's 64, 63. This is what I'm talking about in barbecuing and stuff and brisket. You got to have something that these size. These are pretty close. That one's, let's see, by looking at this, not seeing enough fat. Protein without fat has no flavor. I just don't get that. It's true for almost everything. Without some fat in it, it just doesn't. So many things have no flavor. So, yeah, that's definitely a good candidate. That really ain't too bad of a price. And you always start the fat side down. Get the fat liquefying, stuff like that. That's where you might, only for briefly, might want to have it directly over what is a fully burned down, no green wood, mesquite coals, big chunks that will last, 6 or 8 hours once you reduce the oxygen flow in a barbecue pit. You're talking I hooked my wife with my cooking. Between the barbecuing and the Chinese food, I hooked her. I hooked my wife actually with a Canard à l'Orange, orange glaze, which I didn't use Grand Marnier. I didn't use the liquor because that's actually, they use sour orange in that. I actually took many, many hours using a Bain Marie, a double boiler, to produce like the perfect orange glaze for that duck. It was a wild duck too. And had a couple of bottles of Gewürztraminer wine, which is, despite what y'all, red meat, red wine, all that. No, that's bull. It's, especially since this was an orange glazed duck. But that looks pretty good, but I'm not seeing enough fat on it. You got to have the fat. That's the way you do it. Is you always start with any kind of meat with the fat or the skin side down. You always want to get that sealed and begin to caramelize it. It's really good, even in the case of, of course, you're not on a brisket. You're not really worrying about. If you want to later, you might rub sugar on the meaty parts, but generally I don't. And really, after the initial searing, I move it as far away from the fire as possible, and it can take up to, well, on one on this, I could probably get it done in about, all of these are kind of I see so many of them that are just absolutely tiny. That one's not a bad candidate. They generally, you can tell they really only put a few out here. That's not a bad price. I remember when you could get brisket this size wasn't that long ago, for 99 cents a pound. Yeah. Most of these are pretty good candidates. I don't think I'd pick that one because it looks like thick fat on both sides and not enough meat in the middle. But yeah, that one looks pretty good. I think they may have trimmed a little bit too much fat off of this one. I don't think I'm strong enough to turn it over to look. But that would be right there the smallest brisket that I would ever use. What's the weight on it? It's a little over 17 and about a 17 and a quarter, 17.19 pounds. That's the smallest. And it can take 30 hours to do it right, because really all I'm shooting for after the kind of an initial searing or something, and getting the fat beginning to liquefy, is I'm really looking for a core temperature inside of that, of really, and even in the pit of honey. You got to learn how to control, the oxygen flow at the bottom. You can let it come out the top. You can leave those vents open, but you really have to, once you get your fire started, to make it last and to control the heat, you got to really learn to control that bottom damper and to control the oxygen flow and stuff. My cousins John and Wayne, they raised, slaughtered, and sold over about a 40-year People used to drive 100 miles to come to a little barbecue shack in Caldwell, Texas, and buy from John and Wayne Kreger. And they probably cooked up and served. They also did catered events and stuff like that, did the 4th of July's and stuff like that. And they sold at least and cooked at least 1 million pounds of good, high quality beef. And they had their own sop. I'll give you our family the sop, which is water. Actually, you can get the water with the vinegar, a low concentration vinegar, and they would actually add quite a bit of lemon juice, but no lemon rinds. And then in like maybe in a gallon of sop, a sop is where you have this a wooden handle, and you got like a little cotton mop on the end. That's how you keep them from drying out too much. It's called sop, S-O-P. And out of at least about and they would give, and they would even sell their sop by the quart. And out of maybe a gallon, they might put in, a very small can of tomato paste. And that was it. No garlic, none of that stuff. People used to come and buy 30, 40, 50, or 100 pounds. They only did it usually on, I think, Saturdays and Sundays. They only were open on the weekend. It was right there by the grocery store. They ended up being owned by my cousin. And you'll love the title of the name of the grocery store. It was S&M, but there was a couple of Czech names. I think one of them was Maček. But these are all pretty much the smallest size briskets you would want to start with, because you want to try to maintain or achieve some pinkness in the middle. You don't want it to be gray. Remember that fat that you trim off before you eat it and stuff like that, it just goes into your sauce pots or your stew pots. You never waste any part of a cow. I'm just an original Texan trying to tell you that, because I've seen so many briskets that are only like maybe 8, 10, 12 pounds. Never buy them. That one right there would be the smallest one that I would use. It really looks like the fat configuration on is ideal for you. I would put over a hot fire for just a little while to get the fat really heated up and liquefied. And when you turn it over, you see the fat then begins to run into the meat. You get my drift? So that's the essentials of how to cook a decent Texas brisket in 9 minutes. I'll see you guys later.